The slap echoed through the hotel room like thunder splitting the sky. Nkiru's head snapped to the side, her cheek burning with a fire that had nothing to do with the physical pain. She stood frozen, her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat, unable to escape. The man who had vowed to love her, to protect her, to cherish her until death pulled them apart, had just struck her across the face. And he did it in front of her, the woman who had stolen pieces of their marriage, piece by piece, night after night. Min-jae didn't even hesitate. His hand, still trembling from the violence, reached down and pulled Seo-yeon up from the floor where Nkiru had pushed her moments before. The other woman's lips curved into a smile, wicked and triumphant, as Min-jae's mouth crashed against hers. Right there, right in front of his wife. The kiss was deep, passionate, deliberate. A final humiliation designed to shatter whatever fragments of dignity Nkiru had left. Seo-yeon's laughter filled the room, sharp and cruel, slicing through the thick silence like a blade through silk. She looked at Nkiru with eyes that gleamed with victory, her red singlet barely covering her body, her white shorts clinging to her skin. Everything about her screamed confidence, superiority, possession. She had won, and she wanted Nkiru to know it. Nkiru's hand moved slowly to her face, her fingers touching the spot where his palm had connected with her skin. But she didn't cry. Not a single tear fell. Her eyes, once filled with love and hope, now held nothing but emptiness. A void so deep it swallowed everything around it. The betrayal was complete. The marriage, dead. The love, buried. She turned away, her legs moving on autopilot, carrying her toward the door even though her heart begged her to collapse right there on that hotel room floor. Each step felt like dragging herself through quicksand, heavy and suffocating. Her world was crumbling, brick by brick, and she could do nothing but watch it fall. Then her phone lit up. The screen glowed in the dim hallway, cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The name flashed across the display. Ada. Nkiru's hands trembled as she lifted the phone to her ear. Before she could speak, her daughter's voice poured through. Innocent, sweet, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding on the other end. Mommy, where are you? Why are you taking so long? Are you coming home with Daddy? The words pierced through Nkiru like arrows. Her vision blurred. Her chest tightened. The tears she had been holding back threatened to spill, but she clenched her jaw, forcing them down. She couldn't answer. She couldn't speak. If she opened her mouth, everything inside her would come pouring out. The pain, the rage, the soul-crushing heartbreak. So she did the only thing she could do. She ended the call. The screen went black, and Nkiru walked out of that hotel, leaving behind the man she had loved for 9 years and the life she had built with him. But this wasn't where it began. No, the cracks in their marriage had started long before tonight. Long before the slap. Long before Seo-yeon. And if you want to understand how a love once so beautiful could turn into something so ugly, so devastating, so utterly broken, you need to know the whole story. If you're new to my channel, you're welcome. Please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. Now let's go back to where it all began. Nkiru sat alone in the dim glow of their apartment living room, the silence pressing down on her like a weight she could no longer carry. The walls, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt cold and foreign, as though the love that had built this home had been slowly drained away, leaving nothing but hollow echoes. For 9 years, she had poured everything into this marriage. Her dreams, her identity, her very soul. But lately, it felt like she was fighting a war she could never win. In the next room, Ada slept peacefully, curled beneath her blankets, her small chest rising and falling in rhythm with her innocent dreams. She had no idea that the world she knew was unraveling. No idea that her father had become a stranger. No idea that her mother spent every night waiting for a man who no longer cared to come home. Ada was the only light left in this house. Her bright eyes, her endless questions, her laughter that still managed to break through the darkness. She was the reason Kiru had stayed this long. The reason she had endured the loneliness, the silence, the unanswered calls that had become routine. Kiru had promised herself she would never let Ada feel abandoned, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness, even if it meant living with a man who had stopped loving her. Min-jae had changed. The warmth in his touch had disappeared. The smiles that once reached his eyes had faded into cold indifference. His silence spoke louder than any argument ever could. He had stopped trying, stopped caring. And Kiru had grown numb to the empty promises, the half-hearted apologies, the lies that tasted like poison on his tongue. But tonight felt different. The unanswered calls were too many, the excuses too rehearsed, the distance between them too vast to ignore. She had spent countless nights waiting for him, praying he would walk through that door and be the man she married. But those prayers had gone unanswered. And tonight, something inside her finally snapped. Kiru stood slowly, her body heavy with exhaustion and heartbreak. She walked to Ada's room and stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep. She leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, her heart aching with a truth she couldn't yet speak. Ada was growing up in a house where love no longer lived. And no matter how hard Kiru tried to shield her from it, the truth was creeping in. She returned to the living room, her mind racing. The silence of the apartment felt suffocating, amplifying the void her marriage had become. She had been living with this pain for so long, but tonight, something shifted. She couldn't keep pretending. Not when she knew he was hiding something. Not when she knew he was with someone else. Her phone sat on the coffee table, the screen dark and lifeless. She stared at it for a long moment, her breath shallow. Then, with trembling hands, she picked it up. Her fingers hovered over the screen, hesitation gripping her chest like a vice. She had never done this before. Never invaded his privacy. Never stooped to the level of tracking him like some desperate, paranoid wife. But desperation had a way of reshaping boundaries, of turning pride into survival. She opened the tracking app, something she had installed months ago during a moment of weakness but had never once used. Until now, the app loaded slowly, each second stretching into eternity. Then the map appeared. A red dot pulsed on the screen, marking his location with brutal clarity. Her breath caught. The hotel was less than 15 minutes away. Close enough to reach. Close enough to confirm what her heart already knew but her mind refused to accept. Min-jae wasn't working late. He wasn't stuck in traffic. He wasn't dealing with an emergency at the office. He was at a hotel, with someone else, while his wife sat at home waiting, while his daughter slept, dreaming of a father who would never deserve her love. Kiru stared at the red, her vision blurring with unshed tears. The realization hit her like a tsunami, drowning her in waves of betrayal and rage and soul-crushing pain. But beneath it all, something else stirred. Something cold and sharp and resolute. Enough. She grabbed her coat, her movements mechanical, her mind numb. She glanced once more at Ada's room, guilt stabbing through her chest. But she couldn't turn back now. She had to know. She had to see it with her own eyes. She had to face the truth that had been haunting her for months. The clock on the wall read 7 p.m. The last light of the day was fading, casting long shadows across the street as she stepped outside. The cold evening air bit at her skin, but she barely felt it. Her footsteps were quiet but steady, each one carrying her closer to the moment that would change everything. The world outside felt muted, as though it were holding its breath alongside her. Other people walked past, lost in their own lives, oblivious to the storm raging inside her. She wondered if any of them had ever felt this kind of pain. If any of them knew what it was like to love someone so completely, only to watch them destroy you piece by piece. The hotel loomed ahead, its bright lights cutting through the darkness. Nkiru's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and dialed his number. Once, twice, 3 times. Each call went unanswered. Each ring felt like a knife twisting deeper into her heart. She stood outside the door her tracking app indicated, her finger hovering over the screen. The silence on the other end of those calls told her everything she needed to know. He wasn't going to answer. He didn't care. He was too busy with her. Nkiru pushed the door open. The scene before her felt like something out of a nightmare. Min-jae lay asleep on the bed, his arm draped carelessly across another woman's body. Seo-yeon. She was everything Nkiru wasn't. Young, confident, flawless. Her skin glowed in the dim light, her body barely covered by white shorts and a tight red singlet that left nothing to the imagination. She looked comfortable, possessive, like she belonged there. Nkiru's vision tunneled. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. The rage that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted like a volcano. She didn't think, didn't plan. She just moved. Who the hell are you? Nkiru's voice tore through the room, loud and jagged. Seo-yeon's eyes snapped open. She sat up slowly, a smirk already forming on her lips. She looked at Nkiru with the kind of arrogance that only comes from knowing you've already won. I should be asking you that, Seo-yeon said, her voice dripping with disdain. But I already know. You're the wife, aren't you? The one he's tired of. The words hit Nkiru like a slap. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. You're a prostitute, Nkiru spat, her voice shaking with fury. A homewrecker. You think you can just waltz in and destroy my family? Seo-yeon laughed. A cold, mocking sound that sent chills down Nkiru's spine. Destroy your family? Sweetheart, your family was already broken. I'm just giving him what you couldn't. She stood up, her confidence radiating off her in waves. She stepped closer to Nkiru, her eyes gleaming with cruelty. Maybe if you spoke better Korean, or looked a little more like us, he wouldn't have needed me. But you're just not enough. The words were designed to cut. And they did. But they also ignited something primal in Nkiru. Before she could stop herself, her hands shot out and shoved Seo-yeon hard. The other woman stumbled backward, her arms flailing as she crashed to the floor. The sound jolted Min-jae awake. His eyes flew open, confusion flickering across his face for only a moment before it hardened into something darker. What the hell are you doing here? He snarled, his voice thick with anger. Nkiru stared at him, her chest heaving. What am I doing here? What are you doing here, Min-jae? With her. But he didn't answer. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look ashamed. Instead, he turned to Seo-yeon, who was still on the floor, her expression a mix of shock and satisfaction. And then he did something Nkiru never thought possible. He raised his hand and slapped her, hard, across the face. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Nkiru's head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. But it wasn't the physical pain that broke her. It was the look in his eyes. Cold, distant, unforgiving. He didn't see her as his wife anymore. He saw her as an obstacle, an inconvenience, something to be removed. Without a word, Min-jae reached down and pulled Seo-yeon to her feet. His hands were gentle with her, tender, everything they used to be with Nkiru. And then, as if to drive the final nail into the coffin of their marriage, he kissed her. Right there, right in front of Nkiru. Deep, passionate, deliberate. Seo-yun's laughter rang out again, triumphant and cruel. She looked at Nkiru over Min-jae's shoulder, her eyes gleaming with victory. Nkiru's hand moved to her cheek, her fingers brushing the spot where he had struck her. But she didn't cry. She refused to give them that satisfaction. Her heart was breaking, shattering into a million irreparable pieces, but her face remained blank. She turned and walked toward the door, each step feeling like she was walking through fire. Her vision blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer weight of everything crashing down on her at once. The hallway stretched endlessly before her, each step echoing in the silence like the final beats of a dying heart. She could still hear Seo-yun's laughter behind her, still feel the sting of Min-jae's hand against her face, still taste the bitterness of betrayal coating her tongue like poison. Then her phone vibrated. The screen lit up, cutting through the fog of her devastation. Ada growing heart. Nkiru's hands shook violently as she answered, lifting the phone to her ear with trembling fingers. "Mommy, where are you?" Ada's voice was so pure, so innocent, so untouched by the darkness consuming Nkiru's world. "Why are you taking so long? Are you coming home with Daddy?" The question shattered what little composure Nkiru had left. Her throat tightened, her eyes burned, but she couldn't speak. If she opened her mouth, she would break completely. The sobs building in her chest would escape and she would never be able to put herself back together. So she did the only thing she could. She ended the call and walked out into the night, leaving behind the man she had loved and the life she had built. The drive home was a blur. Nkiru didn't remember getting into her car or navigating the familiar streets. Her body moved on autopilot while her mind replayed the scene over and over. The kiss, the slap, the laughter. Each replay carved the pain deeper into her soul. When she finally walked through the door of their apartment, Ada was waiting in the living room, still awake despite the late hour. Her small hands clutched a toy, but the moment she saw her mother, everything else fell away. Ada's eyes went wide. She stood slowly, her gaze locked on Kiru's face, on the redness blooming across her cheek, on the emptiness in her mother's eyes. "Mommy!" Ada's voice was barely a whisper as she approached, her little feet padding softly across the floor. "Did Daddy hurt you?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade waiting to drop. Kiru felt her entire body go rigid. How could she answer that? How could she tell her 8-year-old daughter that yes, her father, the man she adored, the man she waited up for every night, the man she defended even when he didn't deserve it, had struck her mother in a fit of rage to protect the woman he was betraying them with? Nkiru tried to force a smile, tried to smooth down her hair and straighten her clothes, tried to pretend everything was fine. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just a little bump. I slipped earlier. I'm okay, really." But Ada wasn't a baby anymore. She had grown perceptive, watching, learning, absorbing the tension that had been suffocating their home for months. Her eyes didn't believe the lie. "But Daddy hurt you," Ada insisted, her voice cracking with a sorrow too heavy for someone so young. "I saw it on your face." The truth was too heavy to carry alone anymore. Kiru's fake smile crumbled. Her shoulders sagged. She knelt down in front of her daughter, her hands cupping Ada's small face, and finally let the truth fall between them. "Yes, Ada. He hurt me. I'm sorry." Ada's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks as confusion, hurt, and betrayal warred in her young eyes. She threw her arms around Nkiru's neck, sobbing into her mother's shoulder. And Nkiru held her so tight, as if she could shield her from the ugliness of the world they were trapped in. But she couldn't. The damage was already done. Not just to her, but to her daughter. Ada had seen too much, felt too much, and nothing would ever be the same again. Hours later, long after Nkiru had tucked Ada into bed and kissed her forehead a dozen times. Long after the apartment had fallen silent once more, the front door finally opened. It was 2 a.m. Min-jae stumbled in, reeking of perfume that wasn't Nkiru's and guilt he wouldn't acknowledge. Nkiru was waiting for him. She sat in the dim living room, her eyes hollow but her resolve hardened into steel. When he saw her, he froze. "We need to talk," Nkiru said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Min-jae's jaw tightened. "Not now. I'm tired." "No." The word came out sharp, cutting through his excuse like a knife. "Now. You owe me that much." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, but he didn't leave. He stood there, arms crossed, looking anywhere but at her face, at the bruise he had left on her cheek. "Why are you doing this to us?" Nkiru's voice cracked, the pain bleeding through despite her best efforts. "After 9 years, Min-jae, 9 years of marriage, of building a life together, of raising our daughter. Why? Do you not love me anymore? Am I not enough for you?" His silence was deafening. Each second that passed without an answer felt like another stab to her heart. Finally, he spoke, and his words were colder than anything she could have imagined. "You never gave me a son." Nkiru's breath caught. The air left her lungs in a rush, leaving her gasping. "What? You heard me?" Min-jae continued, his voice growing harder, more bitter. "I wanted a son, an heir, someone to carry on my name. But all you gave me was a daughter. And then you stopped trying." The accusation was so absurd, so cruel, that Nkiru almost laughed. "Stop trying? I didn't stop anything. We have a beautiful daughter who loves you, who worships you, and you're blaming me because she's not a boy. My family expected a son." He shot back, his eyes flashing with anger. "My mother expected a grandson, but you couldn't give me that. So what was I supposed to do? Just accept it? Just live with the disappointment?" Nkiru stood, her whole body trembling with rage and disbelief. "So your solution was to cheat on me? To humiliate me? To bring another woman into our lives and parade her around like I mean nothing? She can give me what you couldn't," Min-jae said flatly, and those words destroyed whatever fragments of hope Nkiru had been clinging to. Then came the final blow, the words that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "I'm marrying her next week." Nkiru staggered backward as if he had physically struck her again. "What? You heard me. I'm taking a second wife. She's already agreed. The ceremony is next Saturday." "You can't be serious," Nkiru whispered, her voice breaking. "You can't just." "I'm not divorcing you," he interrupted coldly. "You'll still be my wife, but she'll be my wife too. And she'll give me the son I need." The room spun. Nkiru gripped the edge of the couch to keep from collapsing. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But it was. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. The next morning arrived with a cruelty that only daylight can bring. Nkiru hadn't slept. She had spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, Min-jae's words echoing in her mind like a death sentence. "I'm marrying her next week." The words were a knife that kept twisting, deeper and deeper, until she wasn't sure she could breathe anymore. She heard Ada's small footsteps padding down the hallway, heard her daughter's door creak open. Nkiru quickly wiped her face, forcing herself to sit up, to look presentable, to pretend she hadn't spent the night drowning in despair. But Ada didn't come to her room. Instead, her footsteps led to Min-jae's door. Nkiru's heart clenched. She moved quietly to the hallway, standing just out of sight, listening. "Good morning, Daddy." Ada's sweet voice rang out, filled with the kind of hope only a child could still hold on to. There was a pause. Then Min-jae's groggy voice responded, "Morning, sweetheart." "Daddy, why didn't you come home last night?" Ada asked, her voice smaller now, tinged with confusion and hurt. "I was waiting for you to tell me stories. You promised." Nkiru heard Minjae shift in his bed, could almost picture him running his hand over his face, searching for an excuse. "I had work, Ada. Important work. I'm sorry." But Ada wasn't satisfied. Children never are when they sense something is wrong. "What happened to Mommy's face, Daddy? Why was she crying? Why is she so sad?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Nkiru held her breath, waiting to hear what lies he would spin for their daughter. "Mommy just had a bad day," Minjae finally said, his voice carefully controlled. "Don't worry about it. Everything's fine." "But it's not fine," Ada pressed, her voice breaking. "Why did Mommy cry? Why don't you love us anymore?" The question hung in the air like a noose. Nkiru felt tears streaming down her face. Her daughter knew. Somehow, despite all their efforts to shield her, Ada knew their family was falling apart. Minjae didn't answer. He couldn't, because the truth was too ugly, and lies wouldn't be enough to convince a child who had been watching their world crumble for months. Instead, he changed tactics. "Ada, everything is fine. Promise. In fact, how about this weekend we'll all go out together. You, me, and Mommy. We'll spend the whole day as a family. Would you like that?" Ada's voice brightened immediately, the way only a child's could. "Really? You promise?" "I promise," Minjae said, and Nkiru could hear the smile in his voice, the fake, manipulative smile he wore so well. Ada left his room practically skipping, her sadness temporarily forgotten in the face of a promise that Nkiru knew he had no intention of keeping. Because Saturday wasn't a family day for Minjae. Saturday was his wedding day. The day he would take another wife and destroy whatever remained of their marriage. Nkiru couldn't stay in that house any longer. After dropping Ada off at school, she drove to the one place she knew she could find solace. Her friend Ji-yeon's apartment in a modest neighborhood in Seoul. Ji-yeon opened the door and immediately knew something was catastrophically wrong. She pulled Nkiru inside, sat her down and waited. And then Nkiru broke. Everything she had been holding inside came pouring out in great, heaving sobs. She told Ji-yeon everything. The hotel, the slap, Seo-yeon's cruel laughter, Min-jae's cold declaration that he was taking a second wife because she had failed to give him a son. "He blames me," Nkiru choked out through her tears. "He blames me for something I have no control over. As if I chose to have a daughter. As if Ada isn't enough. As if our 9 years together mean nothing." Ji-yeon's face hardened with anger. "You need to leave him, Nkiru. You need to take Ada and get out of that house. You don't deserve this. Neither does your daughter." "But where would I go?" Nkiru whispered, her voice breaking. "I have no money, no job. I gave up everything for him, for our family. I have nothing." "Then I'll help you," Ji-yeon said firmly, gripping Nkiru's hands. "I'll lend you money. Enough to get you and Ada out of here. Go back to Nigeria. Start over. Build a new life where he can't hurt you anymore." The words settled over Nkiru like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Nigeria. Home. A place where she could breathe again. Where Ada could grow up without witnessing her parents' toxic marriage. Where they could both heal. "I'll do it," Nkiru said, her voice gaining strength. "I'll leave. This Saturday. Before he even realizes we're gone." After leaving Ji-yeon's apartment, Nkiru picked Ada up from school. On the drive home, Ada asked for ice cream, her voice so innocent, so untouched by the darkness swirling around them. Nkiru couldn't say no. They stopped at a nearby supermarket. As they parked, Ada suddenly gasped. "Mommy, look, that's Daddy's car." Nkiru's heart dropped. She scanned the parking lot and saw it. Min-jae's sleek black sedan, parked just a few spaces away. It's not only your dad who has that type of car, sweetheart, Nkiru said quickly, trying to keep her voice steady. Lots of people have cars like that. But as they walked into the supermarket, Ada's sharp eyes caught something else. She froze in the middle of the aisle, her mouth falling open. "Daddy!" she squealed, breaking free from Kiru's hand and running forward. Kiru's blood turned to ice. There, standing by the produce section, was Min-jae. And beside him, laughing at something he said, was Seo-yeon. They looked comfortable together, natural, like a couple shopping for their future home. Ada ran straight to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "Daddy, what are you doing here? Who is she?" Min-jae's face went pale. He looked like a man caught in a trap with no way out. Seo-yeon's eyes flickered with amusement, her lips curving into that same cruel smile Nkiru remembered from the hotel room. And then Nkiru turned the corner. Their eyes met across the supermarket aisle. For a moment, time stopped. Min-jae's expression shifted from shock to guilt to something that looked almost like fear. Seo-yeon's smile widened, triumphant. Nkiru didn't think. She moved on pure instinct. She rushed forward, scooped Ada up into her arms despite her daughter's protests, and turned on her heel. "Mommy, wait!" Ada cried out. "Why are we leaving? Who was that lady with Daddy?" Nkiru didn't answer. She couldn't. Her entire body was shaking with rage and heartbreak and desperation. She carried Ada to the car, buckled her in, and drove away without looking back. But Ada wouldn't stop asking questions. "Mommy, who was she? Why did you act like that? Why didn't you talk to Daddy?" "Ada, please," Nkiru finally said, her voice barely controlled. "Be quiet. When we get home, I'll explain everything. I promise." But she didn't know how to explain. How do you tell your 8-year-old daughter that her father has replaced you both? That he's building a new family with someone else while pretending yours still exists? Saturday morning arrived like a ticking time bomb. Each person in the fractured family holding their own secret plan close to their chest, unaware of the devastation about to unfold. For Min-jae, today was his wedding day. He had spent the week preparing in secret, arranging the ceremony, inviting his family, planning his future with Seo-yeon. He imagined himself standing at the altar, finally getting what he wanted. A woman who could give him the son he craved, the heir his family demanded. He didn't think about Nkiru, didn't think about the pain he had caused, didn't think about anything except his own desires. For Nkiru, today was Liberation Day. Her suitcases were packed and hidden in the closet. Her friend Ji-yeon had transferred money into her account. The plane tickets to Nigeria were booked for that afternoon. She and Ada would disappear before Min-jae even realized they were gone. She would take her daughter far away from this nightmare, back to her homeland where they could start fresh, heal, and build a life that didn't revolve around a man who saw them as disappointments. For Ada, today was the day she had been waiting for all week. The day Daddy promised they would go out as a family, spend time together, laugh together, be happy together like they used to be. She had picked out her favorite dress, had been talking about it non-stop, her innocent heart clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay again. Min-jae left the house early, citing last-minute work obligations. Nkiru watched him go, her face carefully blank, revealing nothing. She waited 30 minutes after his car disappeared down the street before she began moving. "Ada, sweetheart, we're going on a trip," Nkiru said gently, kneeling in front of her daughter. Ada's face lit up. "A trip? With Daddy? Is this the family day he promised?" Nkiru's heart shattered into even smaller pieces. "No, baby. Just us. We're going to visit Grandma in Nigeria. Wouldn't that be exciting?" Ada's smile faltered. But what about Daddy? What about our family day? Daddy has something else he needs to do today, Nkiru said, choosing her words carefully. But we'll have our own adventure. Just the two of us. She hurried Ada along, loading their suitcases into the car while her daughter asked question after question. Each one was a knife to Nkiru's heart, but she kept moving, kept pushing forward. They had to leave. Now, before Minjae realized what was happening. Meanwhile, across the city, Minjae stood at the altar of an elegant wedding hall. His family filled the seats, their faces a mixture of approval and anticipation. They had never truly accepted Nkiru, the foreign wife who couldn't give them a grandson. But Seo-yun? She was one of them, Korean, beautiful, and she had promised to give Minjae the son he desperately wanted. The music began to play. The doors at the back of the hall remained closed. Minutes passed. The guests began to murmur, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Minjae checked his watch, his jaw tightening. Where was she? Then his phone buzzed. A text message. From Seo-yun. His hands trembled as he opened it, his eyes scanning the words that would destroy everything he had planned. Minjae, I'm so sorry. I can't marry you. I've been hiding the truth. I can't give you what you want. I lost my womb years ago, and I can't give you children. I know you want a son. Please don't hate me. I love you, but I can't be the one you need. The phone slipped from Minjae's fingers, clattering to the floor. The hall went silent. Everyone stared at him, waiting for an explanation he couldn't give. His face turned ashen. His mother stood up, concern etched across her features. Minjae? What's happening? Where is she? But he couldn't answer. The woman he had destroyed his marriage for, the woman he had slapped his wife for, the woman he had pinned all his hopes and dreams on, had just abandoned him at the altar. And the cruelest irony of all? She couldn't give him a son either. Everything he had sacrificed, Nkiru's love, Ada's trust, 9 years of marriage, all of it had been for nothing. The guests began to leave, their whispers filling the hall like poison. His family looked at him with a mixture of pity and disappointment. Minjae stood frozen at the altar, humiliated, broken, alone. When he finally returned home, the silence of the house was deafening. The mansion that had once been filled with Nkiru's laughter and Ada's joy now felt like a tomb. He walked through the empty rooms, each one echoing with memories he had taken for granted. Then he saw it. A letter on his bed, written in Nkiru's familiar handwriting. His hands shook as he picked it up, his eyes racing across the words. Minjae, you always wanted more than I could give. I've come to understand that our love was never enough to fill your endless desires. But I tried. For 9 years I tried. I loved you even when you stopped loving me. I stood by you even when you didn't stand by me. But now I realize we've come to the end of the road. I've taken Ada and we're going back to Nigeria. I will raise her. I will protect her from the world you've created. I can't stay in a place where my daughter's future is uncertain because of your choices. I hope you find what you're looking for. But know this. We are done. This is the best for both of us. I hope you find happiness, but it won't be with me. Goodbye, Minjae. The letter fell from his hands. The reality crashed over him like a tidal wave. She was gone. Ada was gone. Everything was gone. He ran to the gate, his heart pounding. When did they leave? He demanded from the gatekeeper. About 25 minutes ago, sir. Mrs. Nkiru and the young miss had suitcases. They said they were going to the airport. Minjae didn't think. He just ran. He jumped into his car and sped toward the airport, his mind racing, his heart breaking. He had to catch them. He had to apologize. He had to make this right. But when he burst through the airport doors, pushing past travelers and security, his eyes searching desperately for Nkiru and Ada. He saw it. Through the massive windows, a plane was ascending into the sky, carrying away the only two people who had ever truly loved him. Min-jae collapsed to his knees right there in the terminal. People stared, but he didn't care. Tears streamed down his face, sobs racking his body. The successful businessman, the proud Korean son, the man who had wanted everything, was left with nothing. He had destroyed his family chasing a dream that was never real. He had traded unconditional love for conditional approval. He had thrown away 9 years of marriage, a devoted wife, and a daughter who adored him, all for an heir that would never exist. And now, watching that plane disappear into the clouds, Min-jae finally understood the cost of his choices. But understanding came too late. The damage was irreversible. The family he had taken for granted was gone forever. His mistakes had cost him everything, and he would spend the rest of his life paying the price. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you never miss stories like this. Like this video and share your thoughts in the comments section. I read every single one. Share this video with someone you love. Your engagement keeps stories like this coming. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.